Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams.
Thank you for making me second as always.
Cal Wing.
Afternoon.
And Sir Bruce Fitzpatrick.
Hello.
Last but not least.
As always, you can get in touch with us on all of our social media channels at Cookie Jar Golf on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at the caddies that changed golf, and we're going to be going through the caddies that we think have done a good job of changing golf. We're going to start off though. We've got off at the tournament at Jack's Place. Did we watch much of it?
Didn't watch much.
I caught a few snippets.
Workday Charity Open. Yes.
But
I saw
Cal,
bits
you
of
were
it.
following along, weren't you? Yeah.
No, that's what I didn't sadly miss last night, but I've skipped through snippets. And yeah, just flicked on late last night and saw sort of Twitter was erupting. So
Oh, it was a
really,
good watch.
without really having to watch, it knew what was going on. But no, it sounded like a very good joust between Justin Thomas and Collin Morikawa.
Yeah, it was a quality watch. It's the best bit of golf I've watched in a little while, obviously, because we've had lockdown. But it was, the first few playoff holes, the first playoff hole was insane. The putts rolled in were just...
I've seen those, yeah.
Well, they watched a second viewing as well on Sky. They offered a second viewing of it, which I caught the back end of yesterday, and it seemed like Morikawa just came out all guns blazing, just went nuts on the front nine, had a few birdies and an eagle, and then Thomas, who struggled early on, sort of lit the touch paper, as it were, halfway through his round and went on a rampage and eagled like 15, didn't he? But then dropped a couple shots coming in, and obviously that teed up a very exciting playoff, didn't it?
Yeah, but the interesting thing about the playoff was they've both had proper nervy tee shots. Like Justin's completely sprayed his first tee shot into like the wilderness, Harrison Ford territory. And then Morikawa with an open fairway has just ducked it in the bunker. And then they both kind of hacked on, done as good as they can do, and then just drained these putts from another state. It's just unbelievable.
JT's was a monster when I saw that. It was a huge putt.
50 foot.
Longest putt he's made all season, I think. And what a time to do it on the first playoff hole.
Bit of karma there that he didn't end up winning, because maybe this is a bit harsh, but he shouted quite loudly, didn't he?
Yeah.
Obviously, you can tell without the crowd being there, and he's just screamed.
He was pumped, wasn't
with
he?
Morikawa still to putt, and it's like, okay, I'm sure you're pumped up because you've just buried a 50-footer, but screaming and...
How do you think we'd get on doing that at our local club? Like rolling in a 20-footer on 18 and giving it the... Come on!
Yeah, you'd be out the door. You'd be out the door, wouldn't you?
I don't think it'd go down too well, would it? I just don't think it's the done thing, is it?
You'd be receiving words.
Yeah, it's not the done thing, is it?
I suspect that some players would get away with it a little bit on the normal tour schedule, because if you hold a 50-footer on the first playoff hole, the likelihood is you're in a major sort of PGA event, then you're going to have thousands of fans going nuts at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas when there's a couple of cameramen and a few people wearing face masks, it kind of all of a sudden
and you
his
just
voice
got a
carries.
little bit of this. Yeah, you just got a little bit of this in the background. And all of a sudden, Justin Thomas sounds like he's at a rock concert or whatever with a microphone that's far too quiet, and he's just screaming his nuts off. But yeah, fair play to Morikawa.
Yeah,
I mean,
some
looked like he
stones.
was knocking pins out most of the day, and to then follow him in with a 24-footer was
some
good stuff.
some stones to hold that. And then obviously they've gone on and Morikawa's gone to win it. One of the big talking points was the stimp speed being a bit down and how that affected the whole tournament, really. They had the stimp running, or the greens were in 11.5, which obviously for them is
Which is
slow.
fast.
Well, yeah,
That is fast,
It's fast
though,
as,
isn't
isn't it?
Yeah.
But they've
I
obviously...
saw people going to Twitter saying the tournament pros historically struggle on really slow greens as opposed to really fast greens. And then when you said like 11 and a half, I'm like, that's quick. That's quick greens.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. They're fast. I don't care where you play or what courses. 11.5 is not a slow green speed.
No, it's actively quick. I don't think our home track gets up to that, and most courses in the UK won't even get near that in a year. And I mean, you look at like JT's putt, which is obviously downhill, but he's played a significant amount of break on that first putt of the playoff hole, and it's taken like 10 seconds to get to the hole anyway. So I guess if the normal speed was 13, it just beggars belief what kind of putt you'd have had there.
The bit that got me was the stat on the on Morikawa, which was, the last person to win more tour events than they'd missed cuts was Tiger Woods. So obviously he's won 2 events, he's missed 1 cut. Woods won 43 events before he missed his second cut, and that is just absolutely staggering as a statistic. I mean,
it's
couldn't
rare air for sure, isn't it?
But we've had news of, obviously we've got to pay it lip service. Tiger's back next week. That'll be fun.
It's quite a few guys back next week, actually. They released sort of DeChambeau and Rory.
But it's all because of the big man, isn't it?
Boys.
Kiz.
Well, this week is officially sort of Jack's event rather than the Workday Charity Open, but you can see why
As Cole starts making the comeback.
I think he might have got...
Yeah, you've got him on speed dial, Cal.
I think he might have got an invite this week.
Message saying he's heading over. Or...
I think he's finished
Too busy
up on
DJing.
I think he warmed up on the Challenge Tour in Austria this week, and he's jetting over.
He's finished top on the good blokes list, so he gets an invite.
Exactly.
That's a big win, by the way, for Mark Warren last night.
That's
a huge win, because he's been in the doldrums for a while, and that really gives him it's a monster-sized lifeline, that one right there.
Yeah.
But was that Challenge Tour or European Tour?
It was a co-event, so it was European and Challenge Tour.
Right.
But it's a biggie for him. The prize fund was significantly chopped, though. I think the overall purse for the event was, I know it's only €500,000.
Yeah, he won.
Typically, they're a hell of a lot more.
I think he won €55,000 for first spot.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
I know. We're sitting there going, God, that's mental, isn't it? How that's nothing for 4 days golf, but.
And travel and accommodation and
when you think about it, exactly, like, I mean, there's a lot of people who've got a lot of skin in the game travelling out there in uncertain times, and it isn't a massive prize check considering that's a European Tour event. But I don't know.
Morikawa's picked up like what, $1 million probably?
Yeah,
maybe not
more.
that much because the Workday is not that
Probably
much.
more.
But certainly the Memorial
it'd be $1 million instead of
1.2 million
probably. But
how do you think?
Right.
How do you think they're managing to sustain these purses when they're not having a single person walk through the door? I mean, something's got to give somewhere, though, hasn't it? Because the loss of revenue has got to be extreme.
Well, it's probably reflected in that prize fund as well.
Exactly. Who's watching the Austrian? That's why.
No, I'm talking about the PGA.
Fund's dropped. But there's just a much bigger televised audience, isn't there? As an overall percentage of the event.
But they must have taken a wallop, mustn't they?
It's sad, and there are rumours on the grapevine that the European Tour is in quite a bit of difficulty at the moment, just because obviously, I guess by definition, it's a tour for a number of different countries, not one that is just based in America or primarily in America, and so the logistical challenges that are presented by COVID are far greater obstacles. But it's disconcerting to hear that it is struggling so much, and that so many players are being drawn across to America. Obviously, the latest news is Molinari's relocating to California because he wants to play an American schedule, and I guess I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the other pros, like Matt Wallace, Tyrrell Hatton, have been over there and played over in the States since lockdown anyway. But yeah, it just begged the question, like, how viable is the European Tour going to be after we're through all of this uncertainty? Because I think with diminished prize funds, it's making it very difficult to justify playing there.
Well, they're all over there now. I think, as you say, Wallace and Hatton are. I think they actually spent lockdown in Florida, so I think they've both got pads now, and that's certainly what they're doing.
It's naive to think it's not getting looked at, though. I mean, the one thing the US has going for it is it's a domestic tour largely, isn't it? Really, because they're just moving from state to state, and they've got this like sort of different bubble policy thing going on where people are traveling together and stuff. Once you've got to start hosting an event in Austria, and then you've got to go to Spain, and then you've got to go to Italy, and then you've got to go to it's just the complexities. I mean, how long can the tour survive? And then what do they do? Do they maybe is it a merger with like something like a PGA where I don't know, this sort of whole concept of a world tour, and then do you start to have different rankings or different kind of gradings of events?
If you were the Golf Premier League or whatever they were trying to tout 6 months ago, I mean, you'd be in a position now where you're looking at the European Tour boys and you could properly pounce on them, couldn't you? And say, look, we can give you purses, we can do this.
Yeah.
They're in a much stronger position than they were 6 months ago to try and tout that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a shame because the European Tour has had this wonderful reputation, over decades of being a truly international tour that was played as, almost the main tour by the likes of Faldo, Gary Player, Seve, several other legends of the game. And the number of courses or the premier courses that you play at have been so attractive. And I think, from a viewer's standpoint, it certainly offers a lot more variety visually and perhaps from a course architecture standpoint than a lot of these kind of, dare I say it, bomb and gouge layouts that you have on the PGA Tour. But there's no getting around the fact that the PGA Tour is, steamrolling far ahead of the European Tour as far as, from a player interest perspective. And I just wonder if the European Tour is really going to be able to survive these difficult times.
Time will tell. We can but hypothesize.
And on the struggles of the European Tour, on a similar sort of note, I suppose, we've had confirmation of the Ryder Cup cancellation, which we haven't given any lip service to yet.
I think that was the
it's inevitable,
call,
wasn't it?
Really, yeah.
Had to happen. Good call. We'll just have to
wait.
wait.
You can run that without the spectacle of spectators is, yeah. It's just not going to work, is it? So, right decision. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
So,
it's a shame we'll have to wait, but it is what it is.
Back to even numbered years, or back to odd numbered years.
Odd
I should
numbers.
say. Yeah, back to odd numbered years. Nice one.
So the large majority of this pod, we want to look at the caddies that changed the game, or the caddies that have had a huge impact on the sport. Sam, you've got some interesting.
Well, it's a random idea, wasn't
it?
it? I just thinking of stuff that would be of interest that maybe we wouldn't have covered. I just suddenly thought, caddies are a little bit of maybe sometimes the unsung hero in a partnership with players, and you go right back through the history books. I bet you there's some standout examples of caddies that have changed the game of golf. So, I haven't spent ages looking at this. I kind of had a few people in mind and whatnot. So, I mean, how do we want to kick it off? I kind of got a couple of ideas.
Well, but I'm just going to, obviously, because we like to talk about history and stuff like that, but I started my little research into this by looking at the Caddy Hall of Fame, the World Caddy Hall of
I
Fame.
looked at that, actually, yeah.
And there's some names in there that you see and you think, well, it's a bit ropey that these people are getting in the Hall of Fame as a caddy. But then I realised...
Go on.
Okay, here comes a sweeping statement if I've ever heard one.
No,
Go on, Nils, who are we going to just damage our relationship with forever? I do like these moments.
We've gone for fluff.
No.
Anyone?
No. You'll understand where my point is now. Willie Park and Tom Morris, Gene Sarazen, were all put in as caddies. And I wonder whether it's because it's the I was thinking about why they're put in as caddies, but do we think it's because it's the pre-professional era?
I think America has quite a... Yeah,
it's got to be.
And I also think America's constantly looking to endorse the caddy programs because they actually do a lot of good work in America. We don't have them over here, do we? But caddy programs in the States give people an opportunity to get scholarships, college education, better golf, and clearly it's been a big... So why would you not want to have people like that on the Hall of Fame and decorate them, considering the influence they've had on the game? But if you want to take down... Willie Park as part of your opening gambit, then...
No. It's more like, why are they not in there as players? Why have they been put in as caddies?
They're not in the World Golf Hall of Fame. It's the Caddy Hall of Fame. It's a completely separate Hall of Fame. That's the thing in America. You've got these Hall of Fames for everything.
Well, they're
You've got
different.
the sort of... Yeah, you've got the sort of local kind of supermarket Hall of Fame of Massachusetts, and then an equal one for butchers. I think it's nonsense. But there is a Caddy Hall of Fame, which is a really good example of where they've got a large number of caddies who they've decorated posthumously and otherwise.
And bear with me on this one. So the Walk of Stars, or whatever it's called in Hollywood, is a physical thing that you can go and see. Is the Hall of Fame a physical thing? Anyone?
Is that a serious question, or
Is it? Can you go to a Hall of Fame and see?
are you expecting like a corridor where you can walk along and they'll have like a picture?
Probably
Like
Some museum, essentially.
like something out of
museum,
Great Gatsby? Yeah. Okay.
There'll be a USGA museum.
So let's kick this off with the early caddies then. Who's got an early caddy they want to talk about that feels like they've changed the game?
I don't mind jumping in and just throwing one of mine in. So this was a name I'd read a little bit sort of in various different books, but never in any detail. So I'd always seen his name sort of pop up in and around the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s as a name, but then not. And then when I saw him on the Caddy Hall of Fame, I thought, let's do a bit of research. So I don't know what everyone knows about Fred Corcoran.
Very little.
I'm looking at three blank faces here. So Fred was essentially referred to as Mr. Golf across the professional scene in kind of certainly towards the end of his career, 50s, 60s, 70s. Let me just run you through a little bit about his bio. So he started his quote-unquote career at the age of 9. So he was a caddy at Belmont, and he began caddying for Francis Ouimet and Alexa Sterling, I think kind of on a fairly casual basis. And then by the age of 12, managed to get himself to the Caddy Master. So at the age of 12, he's managed to land himself some sort of, whether it's full-time employment or sort of intern gig at the Massachusetts Golf Association. And quite quickly, this is where he's had his biggest legacy on the game, you could argue. So he's devised an idea for tournaments where you use coloured crayons for the leaderboards, and that allows the media to keep up with scoring. So, at a young age, he's come up with this notion of kind of over par, under par, even, using colours and kind of being able to keep the media up to speed. So he's clearly someone who's massively passionate about the game, but he's still at a very young age. And then he goes off to work down at Pinehurst. So he's the assistant secretary of golf, working sort of almost underneath Donald Ross at Pinehurst, which, even from the time it opened in kind of the early 1900s was a, hugely celebrated place. And then you read the record books and it says, right, after that, his career started to take off. So he became the tournament director for the PGA. He was one of the first proper sort of agents in the game. So he represented Sam Snead, Babe Zaharias, Seve Ballesteros, Tom Weiskopf, Tony Lima, throughout his career. And you just think, wow, like the span of just the years that kind of covers. He helped found the World Cup of Golf. So he essentially took the dwindling Canada Cup as it was and kind of helped bring players like Seve and Gary Player to a world stage there, and Bruce kind of talking earlier about the European Tour. And he had a massive, massive impact on the LPGA. So post-World War II, the LPGA had kind of got some events going, not in 1945 through to 1950, but then he put it on a much more official footing. So he used his expertise as essentially the PGA tournament director through the 1930s, replicated that with the LPGA, partnering with people like Wilson Sporting Goods and some other clothing manufacturers, and actually got sizable prize purses running. I mean, there is so much depth to this guy. I was like, how on earth I didn't know about him was beyond belief.
I'd never heard of him until you mentioned it, yeah.
In 10 years, as a tournament director through the 1930s on the PGA, he took the purses from 150k to 750k, 10 years flat. Now, granted, that's probably coming out the back end of the Great Depression in the US, but that's still some serious accomplishment. When he got this job on the tournament director, as kind of running the tournament schedule for the PGA, he had things like, I think it's the Westchester Classic or something like that, and that was like the very much the blue ribbon event in terms of prize money, and where he kind of became affiliated with Sam Snead. So for a long time, he was double hatting as both the tournament director and also a player representative, and there were some arguments around kind of controversy and conflict and whether his stable of players, he had sort of some kind of, you know, underlying motive around where people placed and where they played. But the big thing that comes up throughout all of this is that ultimately this guy was just a huge connector and someone who was beyond passionate about the game. To go from a 9-year-old caddy to caddy master and then trailblaze really through the sport in the, you know, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, when you think you've got a Great Depression, you've got World War II, you know, he's essentially developed the LPGA Tour onto a foundation that it is today. It's absolutely remarkable in my opinion. And clearly he was just the big connector. He knew everyone. He was a fantastic salesman by all accounts. He was able to go off and kind of gain support from other people. And, you know, before there was even need for records and player statistics and stuff, the media just went to him as a sole point of contact for any kind of information, player or course related. So I hugely enjoyed reading up about him because I thought, like, wow, Fred Corcoran, like how people don't know about this guy is just
quite the ascendancy.
unreal.
Yeah, on so many levels as well. He's done so much. He's kind of touched so many different facets of the game and kind of brought it all together under one sort of neat roof in a sense. My caddy of choice actually is in a similar vein actually to that, Sam, although not quite as perhaps prolific in terms of or significant, I guess, when it comes to, you know, looking at the work he did as a commissioner or establishing the LPGA Tour or anything like that. I just think that the story of Eddie Lowry is actually just quite a cool one. So similar to Fred Corcoran, Eddie Lowry caddied for Francis Ouimet. He was born in 1902 in Massachusetts and caddied for Ouimet in the 1913 US Open, which is the event which is covered in such brilliant detail and vividly brought to life by Mark Frost and that great actor Shia LaBeouf as well in the film version. I don't know why you're being sarcastic. I do.
No, it's just nice. It's great. I like Shia LaBeouf. Yeah.
I'm not sure. He's throwing his toys.
It's just nice how we pivoted from history to Shia LaBeouf, and it was right to do so. I like him. So. I wasn't laughing at his career.
And that wonderful account of the underdog taking on the likes of Ted Ray and Harry Vardon, and perhaps the most iconic picture of that match, and one of the most iconic pictures that served as the image for the PGA centennial celebrations was Eddie Lowry and Francis Ouimet striding down one of the fairways, and there's a photo of Eddie Lowry as an 11-year-old kid, which he was back then, with a bag that's about the size of him and a kind of surrounded by a throng of spectators who are all pretty serious looking and absorbed in the match, and he just looks like totally unfazed. And he goes on, and obviously Francis Ouimet with his assistant wins in the playoff over Vardon and Ted Ray. And then Eddie Lowry actually moves, you know, to the West Coast. He moves over to San Francisco. He becomes a very successful businessman, fantastically wealthy through car dealerships and other business ventures. And he basically becomes a kind of supportive enabler of amateurs who back then were still seen as kind of equally competitive with the professionals of the day. And the two amateurs in particular who he supports are Ken Venturi and Harvey Ward. Ken Venturi goes on to win the 1964 US Open, and Harvey Ward is this maverick figure who won the US Amateur in 1955 and 1956. But really, I think it's the tale of a tortured genius in Ward's case. He's someone who really should have won a lot more. And basically, there's a story of Eddie Lowry at a dinner party out in California, and he's boasting about, you know, two friends of his or two people he's supporting are being the best amateurs, and no one in the game could beat them. And another businessman goes out the room and says, "Well, I've actually just had a call with a couple of friends of mine, and these two guys will give Ward and Ventura a good run for their money, I think." And Eddie Lowry says, "Yeah, sure, like whoever, just fix it up and we'll get the match sorted." So the guy makes another phone call and comes back into the room 5 minutes later and says, "Yeah, sure. So I've got Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson." And Eddie Lowry, I imagine at that point, thought, "Well, this is going to be a difficult bet for me to win. I've kind of talked myself into this one,
Hasty.
but I got to go. got to go through with it. Enormous sort of anticipation for this match, which they thought was going to be played at Pebble Beach. So there was a huge crowd that gathered at Pebble the following day or following week, whenever it was. And actually, they'd gone down the road to Cypress Point. And Mark Frost brings this event together in brilliant, vivid detail, just like he does with the greatest game ever played, in a book called The Match, which I highly urge anyone who wants to know more about Lowry, or just, possibly the most outrageous exhibition of golf that's ever been recorded and witnessed by a large group of people, other than Sam taking on the back nine of Blackwell a couple of weeks ago. Basically, yeah, so they roll up. Ken Venturi, who's a very sort of diligent amateur back in the day, rolls up. Ben Hogan, Mr. Professional, and Byron Nelson. And they're waiting for Harvey Ward. They're all on the first tee. Everyone's going, where's Harvey? Where's Harvey? And Harvey Ward sort of rolls up in his car, gets the clubs out the boot. He's looking extremely hungover, apparently with a pair of shades on, puffing a cigar. Says, right, guys, how's it going? Steps on the tee and just roasts a drive down the middle of the fairway. And essentially, to cut a long story short, it's a 4-ball better ball. Harvey Ward and Byron Nelson shoot scores of 67 on their own ball. Ken Venturi shoots a 65. Ben Hogan shoots a 63. The amateur's better ball score is 59, and the professional better ball score is 58. And as a foursome, they have 27 birdies and 1 eagle. So, it's just
that is
incredible.
Unreal.
It's just an incredible story. And apparently, there was actually no money exchange between Eddie Lowry and the other businessman who was involved in this, because they were just like, we've just seen the most incredible exhibition of golf. And by the time the players get to the closing holes of the back nine, I think word has filtered around 17-mile drive that the event's being played at Cypress Point. And the crowd's obviously moved over from Pebble Beach by this point, and apparently there's thousands of people there who are just in awe at this display of ball striking that they witnessed. And it's all really enabled by Eddie Lowry, and that's the story of this guy who's a caddy, just thoroughly passionate about the game, goes on to support these two incredible amateurs. And in some sense, it's a bit of a shame, because Ken Venturi was asked in his later years, who was the best player he'd ever seen play, and he said Harvey Ward, hands down Harvey Ward. And Venturi had played with Jack Nicklaus at this point, and they said, well, was Harvey Ward even better than Jack, Ken? And he said, yeah, Harvey Ward would wipe the floor with him, which is obviously a pretty outrageous statement to make given the illustrious career that the Golden Bear had. But it's just an incredible tale of sort of, prodigious talent and amateur sportsmanship, and a little bit of a bet on the side. So he was my caddy of choice.
Well done, Bruce. Well researched.
Yeah, that is good. The obvious question in my head is, why do they not have? Why was that never almost sort of like taken forward? It's like, we're going to do this more often. Wouldn't it be great to see maybe whether it's like the British Open and the Open and US Open, and maybe the British Am and the US Am winners taking each other on in some form of exhibition match? Obviously we know the answers, cash and gets in the way of a tight schedule. But that, when you think about how good that must have been to see. Yeah,
watching 4 of the best players in the world, and obviously Hogan,
and one of the best courses in the world as well.
Yeah, well, Hogan by this point has reached as close to golfing immortality as he possibly can. He's won 3 majors in 1953. The only reason he couldn't win the PGA is because it was being played at the same time as the Open in Carnoustie, I think, which was the only time he played the Open, and he won it. So
he won it.
The match took place 3 years later, I think, in 56. So Ben Hogan still knows how to get the ball around, put it that way. And you've just got these two sort of whippersnapper amateurs who are incredible players in their own rights. And Harvey Ward is, he wins the US Amateur the year he won the US Amateur, I think the year before. It's just it's just a pretty cool story that is almost made cooler by the fact that people actually don't know that much about it, and there's a sort of awe of secrecy and gambling associated with it. It sounds far better than the match between Tiger and Phil at Shadow Creek a couple of years ago, put it that way.
Well, so moving up the timescale to the sort of late 50s, early 60s, we're going to Augusta and Augusta National Golf Club. I'm going to talk about Carl Jackson, who's a lifelong caddy at Augusta National, which, I mean, considering most caddies will travel the world and stick with one player, actually just to be based at one club your whole career is, I think, is pretty cool. Certainly goes against the system. I mean, Carl began caddying at 11 years old, Augusta. He had his first Masters tournament, age 14, which pretty much includes the likes of basically carrying like Gary Player's bag, and which is pretty nuts. But what a great start! I mean, that's pretty awesome in my mind. But even more impressive, can any of you guess who? I'm sure some of you might have read, but who did he caddy for pretty much the majority of his career?
Carl Jackson.
Yeah,
I thought it was Crenshaw.
Was it Crenshaw? Was it Crenshaw?
39 times, 39 Masters appearances. Essentially, he's caddied for Ben Crenshaw. And he's had 50.
Well, the Masters, you had to use a club caddy, didn't you?
Initially,
In the mid-80s.
So back in the day,
you couldn't take your own caddy.
Correct.
There was a very nice piece on Sky on it the other day, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
it was lovely.
Fitted into their documentary quite well. So I mean, in total, 54 Masters appearances as a caddy. Pretty phenomenal, and he won twice with Crenshaw, which is pretty cool. And he gone on to set up various foundations
including that very emotional victory he had. It was in the early 90s when Harvey Pennick had just passed away a couple of weeks
famous
prior.
photo of Crenshaw sort of breaking down on Carl's shoulder.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's incredible. 54 Masters.
Oh, that's insane. Right. But yeah, he's based just around the corner and absolutely loves it. And apart from that,
did he ever move and caddy for like Ben Crenshaw at other events?
No.
Did he always just stay put? Because there must have come a time.
No, it must have been. I'm not sure whether it was frustrating for Ben Crenshaw, thinking, I've won 2 majors with this guy. It'd be quite cool to see what we can do out on the tour and the rest of the America and maybe around the world. But no, his feet were pretty firm at Augusta, and that's where he wanted to stay. And it's quite cool. I mean, considering, we've talked about it before, that Augusta's actually open, what is it, 6 months of the year? 9 months of the year?
Yeah. Shuts in the summer, doesn't it?
So, not quite sure what he was doing outside of that. That was quite hard to find. But even so, I mean, the guy's, he's a 2-time major champion. Well, as a caddy. But he's still filling his boots, I'm sure, or filled his boots before the winter.
It's interesting that time though through the caddies. Like, I think there was a good one in the Golfers Journal talking about a guy called Iron Man Avery who caddied for Palmer, I think, didn't he? And it was the same sort of situation, and he used to get his massive paycheck when Palmer won, and then kind of just go and rinse it on just fast cars, fast girls and stuff for a few days, and then be absolutely flat broke. And it's just and this guy's a complete hero of the game locally, and yet there was nothing kind of until Palmer came back and anointed his headstone and everything, and so that it was kind of properly referenced, really.
But I think sadly he's about mid-70s now, so I believe he's more or less called a day. I'm sure he's actually around there, whether it be caddy master or what have you now, or focusing on the training side, new guys coming through. But I don't think he's making any more Masters appearances. I'm sure he's there, because I'm sure Crenshaw still goes down as ex-champion and what have you. But
so there's a really speculative shout out to any of our listeners. If you are going to go and play at Augusta National and you have enough bravado to start calling the shots with a caddy master as to who gets on the bag, you think putting a special request in for Carl might be
that's the thing.
Might be the way forward.
There's
could you ask and be like,
that's his world famous.
I wouldn't even talk to my playing partners. I would just be in his ear for the entire round.
He's world famous.
It's like,
can you book?
And he caddied for the best putter in history by many accounts. So he could give you.
Is that what they say about Crenshaw?
Oh yeah, his
yeah.
putting
His
stroke
little
was
blade putter was lethal.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean that's Carl Jackson's cool little story.
I had a similar one. We'll skip through it fairly briefly. When I was looking at it, I did pull out Gary Player's caddy. So you mentioned there that he caddied for Gary Player at the Masters, and
Rabbit.
yeah, Alfred Rabbit Dyer. It's an interesting one. I sort of
Hall of
looked at him
Famer.
a little bit. Yeah, he was
Controversial, you might say.
So I think so, but then I looked into it in a bit more detail, and I thought it was. Long story short, he gets on Player's bag, I think, in 1972. He'd caddied for him about 10 years previously, and through another sort of chance encounter where he was sort of in the day, I think the loopers kind of got on the bus, went to the next venue, and then you'd pitch up and just try and get on someone's bag for the weekend, and that was what he was doing. And then he got into a conversation with Gary Player. Gary Player, I think at the time, had sent his current caddy back home, or his current caddy had gone back to South Africa for whatever reason. And he said, look, if you can, come and caddy for me at the World Series event next weekend, which he did, and then went on to win. And Rabbit Dyer, sort of breaks records in '74 by being the first black non South African caddy at the South African Open. And he's also the first black caddy at the Open at Lytham in '74. This guy's, he has presence. He's 6'5". He wears a straw hat on the course, and he is littered in jewellery. He's a cool cat. There's no getting away from it. And '74, massively controversial year, because that's where you've got this Gary Player. He's 6 shots in the lead, I think, going down 17th at Lytham. Pulls his shot left into sort of waist high rough. And they've got a huge crew looking for the ball, and players saying, look, let's get this on the 5-minute clock. And no one can find it. And then mysteriously the ball appears at about sort of 4 minutes 30, not by Rabbit Dyer, will add, by a marshal or a spectator. And then very quickly after, Player chops out, makes his 5, I think he did, or maybe 6, and goes on to win the tournament with that sort of famous left-handed jab off the side of the clubhouse. There's the rumour mill starts circulating that he's planted that ball there, and there's this apocryphal story that the ball is now sits in a safe at Raw Lytham Golf Club, which, fact or not fact, I would question whether or not that story would have come about had Player had a less infamous caddy, i.e. had a white caddy that no one would have actually paid a huge amount of attention to, and was there the whole attention around having the first black caddy at the Open in history. And I don't know, maybe that's more of an indication of the divide,
the bigotry at the time.
Yeah, maybe. Like let's call it what it is. And I just thought he was a really interesting character because, Player obviously played through a period of time of apartheid, and there's hugely different views on this. There's like when he got into the World Golf Hall of Fame last year, there was a lot of people saying, should Gary Player be awarded, World Golf Hall of Fame status on the basis that he was ambassador for apartheid during that era, and yet, Player and lots of other people would say he opened a lot of doors, a lot of closed doors in the game, and did everything he could to speak out against apartheid. And there's lots of stories that kind of go in both directions with it. But I just thought, as a caddy that helped shape quite an important era, particularly on and off the golf course, he was certainly worthy of note.
Well, moving on nicely from the first black caddy, another first. She's not the first female caddy on the pro game, but she was the first female caddy to win a major, on the bag certainly, was Fanny Sunderson, which I wanted to spend a bit of time on. So Fanny is an interesting one because she was born and raised in Sweden, and at the age of sort of 15, and before I go, actually, do you guys know much about her background?
I know that she caddies for Stenson now.
Okay.
I know she caddied for Faldo. I know
Faldo.
Absolutely nothing else about her.
She
was a good golfer.
She was a really good amateur golfer. So at the age of 15, she queued up at the Scandinavian Enterprise Open in Sweden. Just got in line because she wanted to get on the bag of some pros just so she could see what it's all about and learn a bit. And it was 1986, so it was the days where they just sort of picked local caddies. And all the caddies got picked, apart from 3 caddies that were left, all female. There was the three girls that weren't picked and three caddies that weren't picked, their names were Fanny Sunnison, and then you had sisters Charlotte and Annika Sorenstam.
No way.
Yeah, Annika and Charlotte ended up being pros. Obviously, Annika changing the game of female golf. But Fanny managed to get a player named Jaime Gonzalez from Brazil to caddy for him. And from there, she absolutely skyrocketed in sort of the caddy circles. She ended up caddying for Howard Clark in the late 80s, before in 89 she got picked up by Faldo. And obviously Faldo had just gone through that, probably the most successful swing change in history then at the time, and probably arguably now, because you've got Tiger's changed it hugely, and obviously Bryson's changed it hugely. But he'd gone through this huge swing change with Ledbetter, and then she went on to win 4 majors with him over the next 9-year period. And she was the first female caddy to be on the bag and win a major. And then she got drop bumped by Faldo in 99 when she's gone on to do a few other bits and bobs, and she's had Fred Funk and Nota Begay and Keimer, and obviously now she's working a bit with Stenson. But I mean, she's really opened the door to having female caddies, really.
So, Mills, you mentioned she's the first female caddy to win a major, and it seems to be the case that she's possibly the only female caddy out there at her time on a regular basis, or following the tour round with Faldo, etc. I mean, is it fair to say that Fanny Susan almost marks a kind of the final nail in the coffin of this idea that the caddy is just a glorified bag carrier, which I guess would have just naturally, been the way that caddies were perhaps seen in the past, and she's actually someone who's seen as someone who can offer a lot in terms of strategic analysis of the game, and keeping the player on the right track psychologically, making sure they're thinking in the correct manner and not getting too ahead of themselves, and she offers so much more than just simply kind of carrying a bag round. Would that be? I
think so, because I mean, Faldo was known for his intense sort of preparation, and to be fair, during the time of his playing, he was a pretty intense dude, wasn't he? And he didn't really get along with any of the other players, or certainly that's how it sort of seems to come across. And Fanny's obviously understood, like I'm just reading here, that she's understood that she's had to be equally as meticulous, and she's been known to spend 5 hours just walking the course and checking whether the yardage books were right, which is pretty intense. I mean, that's not someone just carrying a bag round and
it's probably doing more than Patrick Reed's brother-in-law, I suspect.
Probably. I mean, she's been known. So there's like the well-guarded 6th of Bay Hill. She spends an hour on that hole. She just spent a complete hour on it, just walking it, going up and down, making sure that she had all the yardages right, what clubs they were going to hit, where they were, depending on, what lines they were going to take off the tee. I mean, it's fairly meticulous stuff, and I'm not well versed in the land of caddies. I don't know if every caddy is doing that, but it seems pretty intense stuff, and she seems to be certainly paving the way for the more female caddies out there.
Well, I seem to remember hearing a few years ago that Jack Nicklaus was the first player to track yardages and to actually make anything sort of approaching or resembling a yardage book, which you just seen. I mean,
that doesn't sound right.
Laser rangefinders and that kind of thing just sounds absolutely mental, doesn't it? But
it doesn't sound right.
What did they do before that? They just went, feels like an 8-iron.
Just eyeballing it. Well, no, he'd be like, that's a, that looks about 180 yards. I'm going to hit my 5-iron or whatever. I guess, and if you think about it, it would be a fairly arduous task, wouldn't it? Pacing off things and actually having to sort of stride things out or use your little... What was that little contraption you used when you were at school?
It's called a trundle wheel. It was called a trundle wheel.
Yeah. But I think actually...
I don't know whether Ben Hogan's caddy was doing that, but maybe they were just saying, well, yeah, that's roughly 200 yards. Give it your sort of 4-iron or your 2-iron. Bringing it back to Fanny, I mean, she certainly sounds like a very meticulous character in that sense, and I guess that segues quite nicely into Stevie Williams, who I guess is the most visible caddy of recent,
the top-paid New Zealand sportsman. That's a ridiculous stat, wasn't it?
Certainly were. To be fair,
yeah,
questionable whether he's still Whether he still is, I don't know. Whether certain rugby players
does he
have taken
do
over
now?
that now. Like Sir Dan
Who does he
Carter.
caddy for now?
What's that? Well, he's
Who does
been
he caddy
caddying
for
for
now?
Jason Day, on and off for a bit, but he's more or less massively
Really?
into his racing and what have you. So,
Oh yeah, he's racing cars, isn't he? Well, I remember that stat, not that stat, sorry, that quote after Adam Scott won at Firestone like years ago after Steve Williams had just been fired or sacked by Tiger, and they interviewed him, didn't they? It's probably like the first time they've ever interviewed a caddy after their player has won an event.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, like when I go racing and when I caddy, I only go out there to win. And, you know, I won today and that's all that matters. And it's like, well, you're carrying Adam Scott's bag. Like, can
It's
you really
fine
claim that as a
saying
victory?
we. It's fine saying
Yeah.
we in victory,
Yeah.
I think, as a caddy. I think
Yeah.
I is a hugely strong term. Did anyone read the books? He gave Tiger massive slamming, didn't he? Didn't he give him a huge put down in his book
haven't
that he
read.
launched?
Shall I give you a quick?
Was that out the
A
rough?
lot
or
of people
something, or-
rate it. Yeah, a lot of people really
Yeah.
raved about the book.
Shall I pile in for a quick
Yeah, tell us what's about.
biography?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, the guy began caddying age 6. Supposedly, which I think is just ridiculous.
How did he walk 18 holes at the age of
I
6?
don't know what I was
That's
doing at
bollocks.
6, but
Carrying a bag.
certainly wasn't wheeling someone's bag or carrying.
You were just crafting his short game at 6.
Yeah,
weren't
I
you,
was
Cal?
just
You were only just
moisturising the hand.
you weren't even
Yeah.
out of a gap.
And supposedly caddying 36 holes by the age of 10.
Strong game.
I mean,
This is the
almost,
case of a truth getting in the way of a good story, isn't it?
Is
It's
this
like,
Steve's? Yeah,
you know,
are these
did he
Steve's
walk
own
out of the
words?
womb with a tour bag on his shoulder by
must
any
be, and,
chance?
Yeah.
it's almost abuse that asking a child to go caddying age 6. Anyway, but he obviously had an absolute love affair with it, and even though he was a good player, he got down to a 2 handicap by the age of 13. But supposedly he enjoyed caddying more, so sort of dropped playing golf and went off caddying, and his big break came alongside Peter Thompson, age 13, in the New Zealand Open. He got on the bag of Peter Thompson, and that got him a few contacts and a bit of experience. And as soon as he was pretty much of age, which was more or less 16, and he could go off and do his own thing, headed over to Europe and first picked up the bag of Ian Baker Finch. Gave him a run out, and he sort of made a bit of a name for himself. And then Greg Norman.
2 years later, Ian Baker Finch couldn't play golf. 2 years later, Ian Baker Finch couldn't actually play golf and he
Exactly.
quit. And then Steve
Got spotted by
decided to go and psych out another player.
So hang on, let's just walk this back a minute. Did he win the Open with Ian Baker Finch?
No, I don't think
Or in fact, Steve probably said he won the
No,
Open himself. But
I think by that point, I think Norman had picked him up. So he's caddying for Greg Norman at this point.
Good exit strategy, to be fair. That could have gone south quite rapidly
Yeah.
if he'd have pressed on there.
But to be fair, Norman caddied for Norman for a year or two, and Norman actually fired him. He said he was their relationship was getting too personal, and they were. Yeah, I think Norman was struggling to give him certain instructions because they had built quite a good friendship, and whether it was seen they were having too much fun or whatever.
When you said it was too personal, I thought we were going to
swinging or
drift. I
something,
was going to say, I thought we were drifting
they
into some
got
obscenely
very-
good clickbait.
Too friendly were Norman's words. And then after Norman, he's picked up Raymond Floyd, which what a great player. I mean, he's a huge character. Back, I mean, do you know what? Raymond Floyd ran on the side of his professional golfing career. Strip club.
Yeah. In the immortal words of Steve Elkington, Ray Floyd ran titty bars on the side.
Yeah.
It's a checkered past. So he's been involved with some salubrious characters, hasn't he, over the years?
Exactly.
And then picks up Tiger, who's squeaky clean.
Exactly. 1999 rolls around, and
Just a quick one. Who did Tiger drop for Steve Williams?
No idea.
Fluff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that's a big connection there. I didn't know that until I'd done a bit of research on this one.
So in the year of 1999, Tiger's coach at the time, Butch, approached Williams about a job, and Tiger sort of gave him a quick interview and hired him on the spot. And they say the rest is pretty much history. I mean, they were pretty prolific together. All came to a bit of a sour ending. One way or another, yeah, it just sounds... Well, I think it's probably fair to say Steve's probably quite a feisty character and very, very driven in his own way. And then he went on to Adam Scott, Jason Day. But, I mean, getting to the stats, the guy's had over 150 wins as a caddy.
That's pretty incredible.
So, I mean, the major count, well, what's Tiger at 15?
No. It would be 13, wouldn't it?
It would be
Did he
13.
win
It's
a
not the
couple?
first-
Did he win a couple?
not the
of
first
But also, he
or
won
last.
97
Jay
Masters.
Oh, Joe
Yeah,
Leclerc, of course.
and 97 Masters, and then did he win anything else until 99?
I think Stevie Minor picked up a couple with the Shark, but
Oh, did he? Oh, right.
even so,
yeah. I mean, interesting guy, right? Like, how the hell do you get that job at 99? Tiger's been on the scene 2 years. He's in the market for a new caddy. Are there any takers? I bet the queue was around the block. I mean, Butch Harmon was essentially he was the kingmaker there, wasn't he? Yeah, I mean, he was the kingmaker.
Yeah.
so Tiger.
And what's
Exactly.
probably the best Steve Williams or the worst Steve Williams story? I don't know.
One of the best is probably. I
Is,
mean, he wasn't afraid of
the camera.
Yeah, tackling the odd photographer.
Yeah, it's got to be
So
the camera,
it was usually like a spear tackle followed by a camera thrown into a lake or a hedge or something like that.
No way.
Do you know his quote about Mickelson? I wouldn't call him a great player because I hate the prick.
Jesus.
I mean, it's pretty intense stuff, isn't it?
Well, but there was another great story where I think Tiger and Phil went and played an exhibition match out in Japan many years ago, and it was out in China. He went out to China. That was it, because apparently Phil was just laying it on thick at a press conference, just saying, "Yeah, I just absolutely love China. You know, want to come on holiday here with my family," just being totally disingenuous. Just saying, "I absolutely love Chinese food. Yeah, sushi's incredible." And Tiger and Steve apparently looking over, just being like, "This guy's just so disingenuous. It's unreal." And I think the host who'd put it all together, and obviously paid these huge appearance fees to the two pros, then walks over to shake Tiger's hand the following day on the first tee box, and Steve obviously sees this guy walking over, doesn't know who it is, and I mean, apparently, if the account's correct, he just literally sticks his arm out and clotheslines this guy WWE style and stops him from getting anywhere near Woods, which is another outrageous thing. But yeah, he wasn't afraid of protecting his man, was he?
Big guy, big unit. But yeah, and then obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, sort of at one point in time, New Zealand's sort of highest paid sports star, and what have you, and crazy, really. I think he made over 20 mil, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
For carrying a bag, it's not bad, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, without wanting to labour the point too much, I think it's a shame that his career, or certainly his visible career when he was on the bag of Adam Scott, kind of came to such a sour end with those pretty poorly worded remarks about Tiger at several dinners and in interviews and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, they were just totally insensitive, weren't they? And just downright wrong. And then added to which, I think he kind of shot himself in the foot when, he went on that rampage after Adam Scott won at Firestone, saying, "Yeah, I win when I go caddying and I win when I go racing." And then, however many months later it was, Scott bogeyed the last 4 holes at Lytham to lose by 1.
2012,
so
yeah.
It's a bit of a sort of unfortunate end to what was a really incredible career. But you know what? You might not have heard the last of him. Wouldn't be surprised if he engineers a comeback for J-Day.
No, you never know. All a good discussion, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well researched, chaps. That was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, good 40 minutes there.
Yeah, enjoy doing that.
If you have any thoughts or comments, did we miss anybody out? Get in touch with us at Cookie Jar Golf. But as always, it's been a pleasure, and we will speak to you next time.
Adios.
Thank you.
Watch
Adios.
this.